build it, you demolish it. The legendary Homewrecker Burrito. Come build yours today with 20+ fresh ingredients.
First online order, 10% off. Promo code ONLINE.
Welcome to this season's first edition of Over the Boards. I'm Emma Kate DeLello, joined by IcePack head coach Tim Healy. And before we get started, I just want to thank our sponsor, Moe's. If you need to get in contact with them for any of your catering needs, you can go on their website at 919.catering.moes.com or reach them by phone at 919-999-3999.
And it's catering season, office parties, mix it in a little Moe's here, people.
Yes, reach out to them for all of your catering needs. So we have a lot to talk about as this is...
We do, a whole semester's worth.
A whole half a season worth, yes. So kind of just getting started, coming off of the success of last season where the IcePack was able to claim their 4th straight ACC-HL championship, making that their 6th one overall. What were kind of your expectations you had set for the team and for you as a coach going into this season?
Well, I knew we'd be a younger team. We certainly, we graduated a lot. But one of the expectations I really wanted us to make was no looking back, only looking forward, right? You have the players that are in the locker room. Those are our guys. Those are who we're moving forward with. So that was the one expectation. The other expectation was I really wanted a lot out of our captains and our senior leadership group because I felt like we would need to rely on them more this year with so many younger players. I mean, we have 9 new players. That's that's more than a third of the roster, so that's significant. And so those were and as far as expectations is competing, at NC State our expectations never changed for NC State hockey. Winning an ACC championship and getting to the ACHA postseason to chase a national title, those expectations don't change year to year. Those are the programmatic ones. Within the team, those get changed up depending upon the personnel you have year to year.
And can you kind of talk me through the fall semester of play so far as a whole? Your team has already played like a variety of opponents, including a chance to play defending national champions UMary at home ice. So what are you taking from both the wins and losses of this first half of the season and kind of bringing into the next half?
Yeah, the first half of the season was, without question, the most difficult schedule an NC State team has ever played. If you were to go through and you were to look at the ACHA rankings, that's our schedule. I mean, if you were to go, you have Mary, number 1 in the nation. You have Liberty, number 2 or number 3 in the nation. You just have these check marks. Penn State, number 6 in the region. We only played one team, I believe, that's not ranked in the top 20. That's Drexel. I haven't seen the latest rankings, but before we looked at it, because we're on break. So it was really a gauntlet, and we had 3 3-game weekends. So part of what I wanted the fall to be was, 1, really high caliber competition. 2, those 3-game weekends are important because when you get into ACHA postseason play and ACC-HL play, to win or advance, you have to play 3 in a weekend. So you don't have a lot of time in the second semester to do that. Second semester is a sprint. I wanted to do a lot of that in the first semester for preparation for second semester when the stakes get even higher.
Yeah, so a lot of tough opponents there in the first half of the season, and that's definitely not changing going into the second half. And I know you mentioned this earlier, but we have a lot of new faces on the team this year. And I know me and you had previously talked earlier in the season, and you mentioned how important it was for these younger players to kind of step up and find their place within this IcePack team. So how have you kind of seen these younger players step up and find their place on the team and kind of on the ice?
Well, and some of it was, a lot of our younger guys have played even more than we planned to coming in this season. We had a lot of injuries throughout the year. Alex James was out all first semester. You had Garrett Aridi miss significant time. Like, we had a lot of guys that were out. And so that put guys like a Cam Lohr, who spent some time in our top 6 forwards, which Cam's a great player, but coming into the season, we didn't necessarily pencil him in, spending significant time up there. You look at a guy like Gear Stewart, again, playing top 4 minutes on D. So a lot of our guys that they've had to grow up real fast, and the results might not be where we want them to be, but I think going down the line they will be. And then you look at a guy like Zach Herman, who we've really seen grow up before our eyes. You know, he is a guy that, you know, all of his entire career, he's been just, you know, he's been a tremendous point getter. We've actually asked him to step into about a defensive center role, still scoring points, and he's added that dimension to his game. So it's been fantastic to see a lot of these guys grow into different roles. And, you know, all these players, for the most part, were stars at their high school or junior or midget program. You go up a level and you're not always the big scorer. So how do you adapt to that and find a new role? And the guys are doing that really well.
And what do you think that having these younger players step up so far into this season kind of speaks for as the future of this IcePack team?
I think the future is bright. I'm a coach by nature. I want to win, and so there's a patience part in that. You know, I'd like to see results now, and I want results now for them because they worked hard and have earned some of those results. And I'm hoping a lot of the lessons and the competition that we had first semester will yield to, you know, the players on the ice getting the results that, you know, they deserve.
And kind of on the opposite end of that, you have some strong leadership on this team from your veteran players. So how have you seen them step up to be these kind of role models for this younger IcePack team?
You know, we've been really lucky that we've had some great captains over the years, and Ryan Kinney and Sam Benishevitz, and then assistant captains, you know, and Eric Todd, 2-year captain, and assistant captains like Riley Johnson, or, you know, our president is a captain without being a captain, a guy like Parker Zarek or Ian O'Rourke. But this is the first time we've had a captain president since I've been here, in Victor, Victor Hugo. Victor might be the single best captain we've had since Sam Benishevitz. Victor, he's a warrior off the ice, rather on the ice, off the ice. He's so put together. He's calm, collective. If you're a young player and you're coming out to IcePack games and a young D, and you want to watch how to play the position and how to carry yourself, watch Victor Hugo. So really set with him as the captain. And then our assistant captains, and Garrett Arini, Matt Miller, Alex Robinson, they've done a tremendous job as well. It's about as strong as a leadership group that I've seen since I've been here. And then the rest of the seniors too, Ricky Frosch, Eric Daniel, these guys have really, I'm sure I'm missing one, it's always a danger when you're rattling off. Oh, Alex Fong, who back in a 5th year, and Alex, he's having a tremendous year too on that line with Zach Herman. These guys have really stepped up, and they've been great examples and role models for the younger guys coming up and how to conduct yourself on and off the ice. So I couldn't be more thrilled with how they've been doing as well.
And among those leaders, some of those players that you mentioned were these strong defensive players. In 11 out of 17 games played so far this season, your defense was able to keep opponents to 4 goals or less. And 6 of those 11 games, the other team was held to 2 goals or less. So what does that kind of mean to you, and what has stood out the most so far this season as far as your team's goaltending and defensive play as a whole?
Yeah, our goaltending has been consistent, primarily led by Eric Daniel and Isaac Toyer. And Daniel Foley got a little bit of cup of coffee in the Cincinnati game a couple weeks ago. But our goaltending has been consistently good, and our D has been consistently good. I will say, you know, and our offense kind of falls into the same category. I don't think anything has been great yet. I think there's been some great moments. Thinking about the Kentucky game with Eric Daniel and the Liberty game with Isaac Toyer, those were great games. I would like to see, I think maybe that some of the maturity within our defensive corps and how young it is, to have that consistency to be great night in and night out, that hasn't come yet. We've been consistently good, but now we need to move to consistently great.
And kind of how going forward into like the second half of the season, would you kind of coach your defensive players and goaltenders and kind of just the team as a whole, and kind of taking the lessons learned from this previous half of the season?
Well, I think the biggest thing is we're playing a really competitive schedule, and we play great teams. And whereas with our schedule in the past, if we've made a mistake, you know, if we've been good and you make a mistake, the puck doesn't necessarily end up in the back of your net. I think about like the Ohio State game, right? We lost that game 1-0. We made one mistake in that game in terms of a penalty, right? And then on the PK, our guy lost a stick, a freak thing, right? Like those, not a great penalty, followed by a freak thing, and that was the difference in that game. So when we're playing these high caliber teams, the difference is it's minimal, and that one mistake. So that's why we talk about moving from good to great and being consistent at it.
And kind of just wrapping up the first half of the season and talking over that, you have played a lot of road games, which is kind of different compared to last season. So do you think that has any play into the outcome of any of the games this first half of the season?
Well, we've been on the road a lot. A lot of them have been neutral site games with the showcases. So pure road games in another team's barn. There actually hasn't been a ton of those, but a lot of neutral site games. So we've had 9 neutral site games, which is, that's quite a bit. So I think definitely in October there was a little bit of road weariness that came through probably through that first week in November. And so maybe adjust that schedule a little bit next year. And then we have one more showcase out in St. Louis, but I think the guys are really looking forward to that one because it's before classes start. And it's an awesome venue, and I think, and part of the reason why I wanted that right there is it almost becomes like a little bit of a training camp as we head into second semester. But yeah, I think it's done 2 things. I think spending that much time together on the road has helped bring the guys together. It has spent some real quality time together and foster those deep bonds. And again, it's enabled us to see better, consistent competition.
And just one last thing, speaking of those bonds and like teammates and like just leadership coming together, can you kind of speak for the overall kind of just relationship that your teammates have with each other?
Yeah, I think it's a much closer team than we've had in the past. I think when you have seasons like we've had, which, obviously the record isn't where we would want it to be, right? One of 2 things happen, right? It breaks down, it tears you apart, or you have to come together and pull through it. And I think, from what I've seen about these guys, it's coming together and pull through it. I'll give you an example of that. And normally we have a complete shutdown during finals. We're a really academically minded team. The guys asked actually for ice this year in November during finals so they can get out and do captain's practices. They want to be together. They want to keep working at it. So I think that's an example of where they are and closeness. And that starts with the captains too, right? They wanted that. They made sure in the lead up that they had a lot of all team events, whether it be a drive shack outing, things like that, making sure the tailgates were happening. So that has helped bring this team together and weather this storm. And I really think, better days are ahead.
Sounds good. Well, that wraps up our first half of the show. We're going to head to break, and then we'll be back to look at the rest of the season ahead.
Welcome to Bros!
We build it, you demolish it. The legendary Homewrecker Burrito. Come build yours today with 20+ fresh ingredients.
First online order, 10% off. Promo code ONLINE.
All right, so kind of transitioning into the second half of the season. I know you've already mentioned about kind of how long of a break the team is in right now. And the last game played for this team was November 21st in the Governor's Cup at PNC Arena. And the next game is not until the first week of January. You mentioned that they're headed up to St. Louis for the Lindenwood Showcase, where you'll face off against Lindenwood, Davenport, and Trine University. So kind of what does this month or so break look like for your team, and how are you keeping them active during this off time and preparing for this upcoming showcase tournament?
Well, I hope this month is a lot of studying right now, right? I think that's a lot of the reasons why guys, choose to go ACHA hockey is because we can be academics first. So first and foremost, I hope this month is a lot of studying this week and crushing it, getting some academic weapons out there, some academic All-Americans. So that's the first part. Beyond that, it is incumbent upon them to keep themselves in shape, right? They're going home to their families. It's really on them. And I think one of the things I'm excited about this year is I know the leadership group has taken that on more. I also think too, they're really lucky that they go to NC State. Carmichael is such a fantastic facility to go and keep themselves in shape, and as far as an on-campus venue. So I'm not so much worried about that. They're pretty, even though they're young, they're a pretty mature team, and they're taking this pretty serious.
A lot of good resources to them that hopefully they're taking
Yeah, so if you're listening out there, you're thinking about coming to state, challenge you to find a better recreational facility, weight facility than Carmichael. You're not going to find one out there.
And the Ice Pack has just 4 home games left in the regular season. once the spring semester play starts. And these opponents include University of Delaware and Virginia Tech, who the Ice Pack have yet to face this season, and UNC, who the Ice Pack are 0-2 against this season.
Yeah, you had to mention that part, huh? So.
And what are you kind of telling your team ahead of these Final Four home games against these teams and kind of the preparation going into these good matchups?
Well, even besides those 4 home games, you mentioned the 3 games out in St. Louis. It's kind of fun. 2 of those teams are teams we faced at Nationals before, trying the first time we went, in Davenport the second time we went. And Lindenwood's a traditional power. And first of all, it's a really cool facility out there. It'll feature an outdoor game while we're out there at the Centene Center. Maybe a little tease here. It might be a prelude of things to come from outdoor stuff. Maybe, 3rd week of February on that Monday, you might want to, just
Keep
saying,
your calendar open.
possibly, not confirming nor denying. But anyway, so yeah, it's, to your question about the 4 home games. So first of all, we want to get off to a good start at that Lindenwood showcase. And then we come back and we play Delaware for a pair. Delaware is a team that's actually a lot like us. They're used to being in that regionals mix, kind of in the 7th, 8th ranking. They've had a slow start, but then they got a really great result in an upset over Penn State a couple weeks ago, similar to us, right? So I think that's going to be a good test. What's exciting about that is that's the first weekend we're going to have Chase Williams in the lineup. Chase is a second semester admit. He's a really talented kid that was practicing with us all fall. He is a very dynamic player. Him and Zach Herman are probably going to be a chirp show. You might want to get them mic'd up during games. It will be, so we're excited to have them back, and that's a nice 2-game home set. Friday night, it's not confirmed yet, just checking his schedule. That's one you're not going to want to miss because we're actually going to be retiring the number of George Alves. And for those of you that don't know George played for us in the early 2000s. That was a team that went on to regionals. He's one of the equipment managers for the Carolina Hurricanes. But he appeared in an NHL game as an e-bug down in Tampa a few years ago. So, if we talk about ACHA to the show, so come on out as we look to retire George's number that night. I mean, you make it to the show, you need to get your jersey retired. And we've been looking to do this for a couple of years, but with COVID and obviously the Canes road schedule. So that's an exciting one. The other 2 home games, Virginia Tech is a key divisional game in our Premier Division. And then obviously we have, a little bit of retribution still out there with UNC. And I think when you ask about what I'm looking for, though, I'm looking for consistent efforts, right? Like if you look at the UNC games, the PNC game, the Governor's Cup, in so many ways encapsulated our season, right? Like we had 2 periods that were not very good, and then a 3rd period that was awesome. And if that team that was out there was the 3rd period plays that way every period, there's really almost no one that can beat us.
And kind of going off, like you mentioned, all the nice on-campus resources for staying in shape for this month break and for the season as a whole. And you mentioned the 3rd period playing a lot stronger in that than the first 2 in the Governor's Cup. There are a lot of back-to-back weekends coming up in the second half of the season, and there have already been a lot in the first half. So kind of how has your team prepared themselves mentally and physically for these situations and making sure that they are in the position to play all 60 minutes of hockey with the same amount of speed and everything like that?
And I think that's where the depth comes into play too. Our 4th and 5th lines have probably been stronger than they have ever been in the past. And so if you think about the PNC game, we played 4 lines through the first 2 periods, and in the 3rd period we dropped to 3 lines because that 4th line is solid and was able to play for the first 2 periods of regular shift. We always haven't had that in the past in big games, even when we went to nationals first time about 5 years ago. And then honestly, a lot of the times our 4th line have really been guys that probably would be part of the 5th line with injuries. So the fact that if you look how many guys have skated, our depth is really good. And I think you talk about those back-to-backs, that's really the key for it. Hockey is a game, guys get banged up, they get hurt. To be able to put guys in the lineup, and it's really been just next man up the whole year. And that's a great attitude to see. Everyone's been ready to go. And I think, our conditioning's been good. It hasn't, when we've come up short, it hasn't been for a lack of conditioning. Like the UNC game, we scored 2 goals in the 3rd period, and we were on the attack in that 3rd. Even the Cincinnati game on that Friday night that, we lost for Cincinnati, then we beat Cincinnati. And that Friday night against Cincinnati, we outshot them 17-7 in the third period, even though we lost that game. The second night, again, I think we went in and we outscored them in the third period in that game too. So third periods haven't necessarily been, if we've lost it, it hasn't been due to conditioning and fitness. It's either something's happened, like a bad penalty or something like that. So the team is, they've been conditioned well, and they're also used to these. You talk about back-to-backs. Well, they've had a lot of 3-game weekends too, right? So back-to-backs, nothing at this point. And, the one back-to-back is at home, so that's always helpful. You have UNC. We have a back-to-back there, home away. I mean, that's essentially 2 home games in terms of travel and wear and tear in the body. And Virginia Tech's a home and away and a back-to-back. And again, that's not terrible wear and tear in the body either.
So a lot of fun games coming up. And kind of in the spirit of the holidays and the upcoming new year, what are some goals or resolutions that you've kind of set for yourself personally as a coach and for your team as a whole?
Well, I'm not a big New Year's resolutions person, but one thing that we've talked a lot about in our coaching staff, and this break is kind of a chance for us to regroup, is we want our compete level to go way up. And a good buddy of mine who coached at the University of Maine, just stepped down from there, his name's Ricky Rickenbach. When I was talking about our season, one of the things he said to me was, if you're not seeing it in practice, you can't expect it to happen in games. And for us, it's our compete. And competing for 60 minutes. So we want to bring that compete level into all of our practices to transfer it out there. I think in the past, a guy like Riley Johnson or Parker's Eric, for example, if they didn't practice all week, their compete level would still be off the charts on Friday and Saturday night. Riley in particular was one of the most competitive human beings I've ever met in my life. Not to say that our guys aren't competitive, but they're younger, right? So we have to nurture that compete into them a little bit more. So that's something going to the new year, is upping the tempo of the practices, upping our compete level of practices.
And kind of just one more question to wrap everything up. What would be your 3 main takeaways that you've kind of seen, even just for preparation from the off season, putting this team together, and just the first half of the season as a whole?
I think the 3 main takeaways is where Bill Parcells once said, "You are what your record says you are," and that's true. That being said, I think we're a lot closer to a breakthrough than people think. This record could easily be flipped, and that's what we need to do second semester. So we're a lot closer. I think another takeaway, you talk about those 4 home games. Our guys really thrive on Pack Nation being there and supporting us. So you've been with us through a lot of almost undefeated seasons when we've been 19-0 at this point. We need you now more than ever, especially these young guys. They need you pulling you. When you're in Invisalign Arena and you start hearing the Wolf Pack, it helps our boys. It pulls them through. In that third period against PNC, they were loud, and it was great, and that helps a lot. So one is flipping the switch and the competitive. 2 is having our fans keep coming out. I think the 3 takeaway is, just perspective that this is all a process of getting better, right? Each week getting better and making sure you're in the position that when we get to the postseason, we're ready to roll. When you think about the ACHA postseason, we've gone directly to nationals, right? We've been an 8th, 9th seed in regionals and have gone and made it to nationals. Last year we were the 3 seed and we didn't make it to nationals. So it is a lot of like the NHL playoffs. Just get yourself there, and then anything can happen. And I think that's the big thing for this year. It's the third thing. It's just get ourselves in that position to be there, and then everyone starts off 0-0.
Yes, well, there's a lot of fun stuff to look to in the second half of the season, and you heard him, Wolfpack Nation. We need you these next 4 home games, and maybe a Monday in February.
And any alums out in St. Louis, get out to see us when we're out there. So,
yes, all right. And wear red. So thank you, Coach, and hope you guys enjoyed our first of the season over the boards. I'm Emma Kate Solello, and he is Ice Pack head coach Tim.
All right, thank you, Emma Kate, and go Pack.
Go Pack.